Hi, this is Sarah.
And this is Rachel.
And this is the Rippah Diaries, a podcast where we rip apart, episode by episode, the Vampire Diaries. But today is a special topic episode. We'll be focusing on just a specific sort of idea or question. So we will still be getting into spoilers for the Vampire Diaries as well as for the originals. However, we won't mention any spoilers for Legacies. But those other two shows, I mean, we're talking pretty in depth about it. So spoilers, beware.
Yeah, in this special episode, we're talking about the reasons to turn someone into a vampire. In episode 17 of season 1, Anna tells Jeremy that there are 4 reasons to turn someone into a vampire. And after we thought about it, and we talked about it during the podcast episode, we realized a lot of them do fit into those categories, but there was a lot to talk about with each of them, and then some that don't fit into those categories.
Yeah, she I think really did an accurate assessment, but there's of course going to be outliers. I mean, from Vampires and Originals, we've just seen so many use cases over like thousands of years that it's like, you know, there's going to be some outliers.
Yeah, you can't categorize everyone, but to that end, what Anna says are her categories are: first, she says you can turn someone to do your dirty work.
Of course.
Of course, classic. Then she says you can turn someone out of boredom. And even she notes that doesn't turn out well usually.
Yeah.
She also says you can turn someone out of revenge. And of course, you love someone so much that you want to spend eternity with them.
Of course. That's such a classic reason to turn a vampire.
Yeah.
And that rolls us pretty nicely into where we're going to start this. We're going to go sort of chronologically with the very first people that were turned into vampires. And that's, of course, the Michelson family, who are known as the Originals.
Yes.
You got to start at the very top. And, of course, the story is that Klaus, Elijah, Rebecca, Finn, and Cole were all turned into vampires by their mother, Esther, who became known as the original witch, but, of course, is just a witch that created vampires.
Yes.
So I think that this one, for me, is an easy, like, the reason they were turned was love. It does fit into Anna's category of, like, it was love. It was because the mother did not want her children to die.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely fits into the category love. I think, you know, Anna says you want to be together for eternity. I don't think that always applies, but broadly love, absolutely.
Yeah, I do think the tacking on the you want to be together for eternity is not the most accurate, like, roundup of love, because to me that almost sounds a little bit more romantic love than like familial or a friendship or even compassion, which we'll get into a little bit later with some people, I think. But it is definitely a mother's love that creates vampirism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think for our purposes, love will be broadly love, like all types of love.
Yeah, and so they're an easy categorization of, like, that is why vampirism is started, is love. Yeah. From there, of course, then that spirals, because now that the 5 first vampires have been created, and I guess 6, because Michael is also turned into a vampire in this whole thing. So we get those first original vampires, and from the originals, we actually see the first people that they turn. Yeah. Which the circumstances are that they didn't even know that they could turn people into vampires. It's like a really weird roundabout, people getting blood in their system accidentally. Yeah. And the first person turned into a vampire is Lucian.
Yeah, Lucian, it's a whole thing to explain. But yeah, like you said, Lucian is pretty much turned by accident. Yeah. He gets some of Klaus's blood in his blood, and then they realize that will heal him. So that's also the first time they discover that blood will heal. Yeah. Will heal humans, people. Yeah. And then, Lucian thinks he's a vampire and gets killed, of course, because he was, probably being a little overconfident with it.
Yeah. Power went to his head. Yep. So for me, Lucian especially is this really weird outlier of, like, he can't fit into any category because he was the first, and it was just truly completely on accident.
Yeah. He doesn't fit into anything either, I don't think. Yeah.
It's just, again, like, Esther did it intentionally. She made the originals, and then from there on, pretty much everyone else is, some are accidentally, had vampire in their system. Yeah. We'll get through some of those examples. But for the most case, people are, like, made or they are turned. Yes. Whereas, like, Lucian is, like, 1,000% they didn't even know it was a possibility.
They had no clue, yeah.
So he just doesn't fit any categories. But pretty quickly after him is Tristan and his sister Aurora. Yes. They're also a little sticky. I don't know if there's exactly a reason for either of those. Yeah. They sort of also fit into the accidental... I don't know if they'd even realized at that point that they could make vampires category.
Yeah. It was, I think they were both shortly after Lucian.
It was all like the same week, same sort of day.
All really quickly. And I do think it all kind of happened by accident because Aurora, I remember, just has Rebecca's blood in her because, again, they had just found out they could heal people.
Yeah.
And then Aurora takes her own life to turn. Yeah. I don't think she's intending to turn, but she kind of accidentally does it to herself.
So maybe all three of those were truly just like the learning curve. That's their reason.
I think that's a great way to categorize it. They can just be called the learning curve.
Yeah, it's almost like, so we've got Anna's 4. Mm-hmm. We've already added on a 5th is just the learning curve.
Yeah.
And it's really only those 3.
It's just those 3, yeah.
I mean, maybe there might be some other like vampires in existence who've created people by accident without knowing it was a possibility, but like that just seems so odd.
Yeah, I think by accident definitely happens.
People by accident,
but without knowing it's a possibility.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot. There might be some, but not within the show.
No, I don't think so.
From there, they now know they can create vampires, and that opens up a whole other world.
Yeah, that's a game changer. I think. And again, the way each of the originals, which I think is how we'll talk about it, the way each of them turns everyone is very different. It doesn't always fall into these categories.
Yeah, I think we could fit them. So let's start with, I think, Elijah, because we meet the most people, I think, turned by Elijah. We meet quite a bit turned by Klaus as well. But like we know a lot of people that were turned directly by Elijah.
Yeah, I think so. I think Klaus is interesting because we know more like individuals well.
Yeah, that's true.
But like sheer numbers, we know Elijah turned all of the Strix. So again, hope you've seen originals if you're watching. But
if you haven't, you got to watch it.
Yeah, definitely watch it. But yeah, Elijah turns this whole sort of secret society because he wants to create a better world, and he, obviously, he wants the brightest and best minds, living forever, working toward that end, making the world a better place.
Yeah. In my opinion, I know this is a bit of a squeeze, but I think it kind of fits into Anna's first category of people to do your dirty work.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily dirty work. Elijah's not turning, and we don't know the circumstances behind specifically why he turned a lot of these people. So maybe they directly were for dirty work purposes, but it is almost like to do his bidding, to like, I mean, like you said, it's like he's turning them because he wants these like bright minds in the world. He like it is in a way for his ulterior motives.
Yeah. No, I think that works. I agree. Like if you're using the phrase dirty work, it feels like a bit of a squeeze. But I think, again, like the love category, if we take it a little bit broader and say like just like a comrade, like a companion.
Yeah. Or people, even just like, someone to achieve some sort of goal you want. Yeah. Like whatever that broader word or like phrasing of that category would be, it feels like that's where the Strix and probably most of the people Elijah turned fall.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a pretty accurate place to put them. So I think they could count towards someone to do your dirty work, but like a little broader.
Which, not even having to broaden it, the next original, Klaus, I think directly turns people specifically
to do his dirty work. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of the hybrids.
Yes.
All the failed hybrids and the new hybrids that actually work.
Yeah.
All of those people are turned because he wants people to do his dirty work.
Yeah, I do think there's one outlier for Klaus that we know, and that's Marcel.
Definitely. Yeah, I wasn't going to lump Marcel in with the hybrids because they're just so different. But I think Marcel is obviously love.
Yes, Marcel is raised by Klaus. Klaus is like basically his father. Yeah. And so that is the one outlier in terms of the people that Klaus has turned, that he actually did it because he loved that person and wanted to stay with them, and didn't want to see him grow old and like die. So it's interesting. I wonder, and I was kind of thinking this with Elijah as well, is like, there must have been someone somewhere along the way that he turned because he truly wanted to spend time with them and spend forever with them. I don't know that we get a specific example of that. I can't really think of one. But that's definitely Marcel for Klaus.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that is, like you said, really the one case for Klaus where we see it's turned for love.
Yeah, definitely. And which is a good segue into the next original, Rebecca, who, again, I don't know that we really see a lot of people that Rebecca's turned. I can't even think of anybody that's directly turned by Rebecca. But
other than Aurora,
which is accidental. But other than that, I have to believe that Rebecca is the type that would be turning people for love and not really.
Of course.
I could see her doing a boredom turn somewhere in there over the centuries.
I'm sure every vampire has had probably one boredom turn.
At least the originals.
At least the originals. 1,000 years? Come on.
Yeah.
You had to.
You're doing it once. Yeah. But I think primarily Rebecca's use case would be love. I think that's so too. Probably the only reason she would do it.
Yeah, I think so too. And for example, I think, if Klaus hadn't turned Marcel, she would have turned Marcel.
Oh, for sure.
Because she loved him, of course.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I think that's 1,000%.
Yeah.
Where those three fall.
Definitely.
Gets a little sticky after that is Cole because again, I don't know a single vampire that Cole ever directly turned.
No.
I could kind of see him falling into every one of those categories in a way.
Yeah.
I think he can be just as reckless and impulsive as like a Damon. Mm-hmm, so I could see him doing the boredom turn just for funsies.
Yeah.
I definitely could see him doing a love turn as well. I think if you've only watched Vampire Diaries, which again I hope you haven't, but if you have, I think it's hard to imagine that he would turn someone for love. But first of all, who wouldn't turn someone for love?
Yeah, I'm sure everyone, especially when your emotions are so heightened.
Yeah, that anyone would do it. But I do think that the originals, or what we get of him in the originals, you do get that more romantic and like loving side of him that you could see how he would turn someone for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though that in the originals, and again, if you've only seen the Vampire Diaries, you wouldn't really get this, but it does show that he mostly spends his time with witches, and that's how he spent a lot of his time, historically. So I don't know if he ever would have fallen in love with anyone that was human would want to turn. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it happened because, again, it's 1,000 years. But I don't think it would be mostly for love. Yeah, it's like a one-off, probably.
Yeah, he's such a mysterious character to me in that way because I also don't really think he'd turn that many people for dirty work. No. Maybe here or there, but I just don't think, again, he spends so much time with witches and he really seems to be very tied to his magic that it makes me wonder if he also sees the vampirism as a curse. We see in originals that he does struggle with it a lot. Yeah. So I do wonder if he'd be willing to put that on somebody else.
Yeah. To that point, I was thinking the same thing about how I don't even know if he would have turned that many people out of boredom. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he did. Again, it's 1,000 years. You got to kill time. Yeah. But I don't really think he would have turned that many people even out of boredom.
The only thing I can see is that he's so reckless that I could see him maybe doing it. But I don't know. He's a hard one there. I don't think he's probably turned a lot of people, which is a good segue into the next original Finn. Yes. Who, canonically, I think has turned minimal people, and potentially Sage was the only one.
I'm pretty sure they say it's only Sage.
Yeah, and he's in a box for 900 years. So.
That's true, yeah. He's realistically, his lifespan as a vampire is
so much shorter.
100 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they do say he's only turned Sage, and that's obviously for love.
Yes, yeah.
He obviously, and I think that's the romantic love too.
Yes. Which again, I think same as what we're kind of saying with Cole is Finn definitely for sure sees vampirism as a curse.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a huge plot line of his. In both the Vampire Diaries and the originals. Yeah.
He's always backing up his mom that vampires are abomination and need to be destroyed. So he's not just going around turning people because he's bored or because he needs somebody to go get his groceries for him. No, he's doing it if he's doing it, it's only because he wants somebody else to be in his life for forever. Yeah. So that rounds up the originals as to generally speaking why they would turn vampires, and again some specifics with Marcel. Other than that, I don't think we know a lot of specific people that they turned. No, but from there we do know from people they've turned. Mm-hmm. So Marcel we know turns quite a bit of vampires.
Yeah, Marcel has his whole community in New Orleans in the originals, which I think, probably most, if not all of those people could be lumped into the category, someone to do your dirty work. Yeah. I think he does grow to love a lot of them as friends.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, like Thierry, with his little hat. Yeah. He loves his hat in spite of it. Yeah. But yeah, I think probably all of those people are turned to do his dirty work.
I think this is another one where we have to broaden the sort of category of dirty work, because I also don't necessarily think it's per se for dirty work so much as that we know Marcel's like big quote is like, I'm the king. Like, his whole thing is about building an empire, and the only way you can do that is by having loyal followers.
Yeah, people to do your dirty work.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that is his reason, and we do get a direct character, like a main character that we see turned by Marcel, which is of course Josh is turned in the very first episode of the originals.
Yeah.
And I think the circumstances of that is literally they like take some like club kids, give them blood, and then they have two of them, and he has his loyalty test with the coin where like somebody has to pick up the coin in order to like choose to join him, to live, but he kills the one who picks up the coin and turns the other. And in this case it's Josh, because the friend that he's with betrays him and takes the coin, and they kill him and turn Josh.
And so I think even Josh falls into the someone to do your dirty work.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's definitely, again, I do think Marcel definitely grows to love him. I mean, Josh becomes so close to Davina, especially that they're just all roped in together as a little family. And Josh becomes such an important character in originals. So it's hard to say he got turned for dirty work, but he did.
But that's pretty much what it is. Yeah.
Growing an empire, that is why he was turned.
Yeah, pretty much.
Next on the list of people that were turned is Aurora turns Cammy.
Yeah, that's a whole thing in originals where Aurora turns Cammy out of sort of revenge.
I think it's revenge.
Is the reason. Yeah, it's sort of revenge against Klaus, and because Klaus loves Cammy and not Aurora.
Yeah, it's to punish Klaus is why that's why she does it. So that's one of Anna's categories is revenge, and that's the first example so far of a revenge turn, and Cammy is that.
Yeah, I think, and I was actually surprised. We see revenge way less than I thought, especially in originals. I thought there would be a lot of revenge.
I know.
But
I think really she's the only
pretty
one.
Pretty much just Cammy.
Yeah, there's some sort of similar to revenge examples that are like characters whose names I couldn't even recall, like witches who are turned to stop their magic and things like that I guess are sort of revenge, but like they're not notable. She's the only notable character who's turned for revenge.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's pretty notable. It's a whole sad
it's really devastating. But yeah, Cammy is killed for revenge, and then the only person that we know that's close to the originals that is turned is Scary Mary.
Yeah.
She's, if you remember from the Vampire Diaries, she's a random character when they're searching for, Damon and Stefan and Caroline's lineage. She turns Rose. We don't totally know the circumstances as to why Scary Mary was turned. We know she was a groupie for the original.
Yeah, that's what Cole says. She was a bit of an original groupie. She hung out with, there was an Elijah phase. Yep. I hung out with her. She loved Rebecca.
Yep, a Klaus phase too, I think.
Which we know she was turned by Klaus because they do get the answer, of course, that they are turned by Klaus. So Klaus, at some point, for some reason, turned her. Don't know why or how. But Scary Mary, of course, does turn Rose. Again, don't know the why or how of that. But, of course, that is important because it is Rose's blood that turns Catherine.
Yes.
Other than that, the only person attached to that we know is Trevor.
Yeah, I think Rose is supposed to have turned Trevor. I'm not sure that's 100% confirmed. But, I mean, if that is the case, Rose turned Trevor, that pretty cleanly falls into love.
Yeah.
Platonic love, of course, but still love.
Again, I think that the way Anna, portrays that idea of love is a romantic love, but I think it's a much broader,
I think so too.
A mother's love, a friend's love. It is a very wide category of love. Yeah. I would turn you if I got turned. I'd be like,
obviously, same.
you gotta be with me forever.
Yeah, of course, I would do the same.
Yeah, so it's like a broad topic of all ways, shapes, and forms of love.
Absolutely.
And so that's Trevor's reason, I think, if that's the accurate.
Yeah, if
that
it really
Rose
is
turned
Rose,
her.
that's why.
Then not the same circumstances at all.
Not even close.
Is Catherine.
Yep.
And of course, this is fully classic Catherine Pierce. She's a weird outlier because she is turned by Rose's blood because she hurts herself so that Rose has to give her blood to heal her. And then from there, she, takes her own life so that she can become a vampire because she's trying to run from Klaus. And as a human, she does not stand a chance.
Yeah, I think Catherine falls into one of my, other categories that Anna sort of missed that I will mention at the end when we kind of try to wrap up. But yeah, Catherine is a really weird case. It's definitely not love. Maybe you could sort of say revenge. She's trying to
Yeah, revenge against
know.
Klaus, maybe, but it doesn't fit
reach.
right.
Yeah.
I agree that there is I guess, sixth category, because we've already established the learning curve.
I have 6. Or 7, maybe, if we have the learning curve.
Yeah, we've already established number 5 is the learning curve that Anna missed. She wouldn't know about that. And I do think there is this 6th category that Catherine fits into that we'll get to. But, yeah, there's one that she missed here of an outlier that she didn't. I mean, again, it's unintentional from a vampire standpoint. So I think the way that Anna's taking it is like she's saying to Jeremy, there's only these reasons that a vampire would turn someone. No one had a choice in turning Catherine. That was Catherine's choice.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, she sort of betrays Rose, and Rose is upset about it, that, you know, she got her blood without Rose consenting to that. And obviously that ruins things for Rose and Trevor. So
yeah, they're on the run for as long as Catherine is, for 500 years because of what Catherine does to them. So it almost, Anna is still correct in that Catherine was not intentionally turned by a vampire. However, circumstances are the same, and Catherine does get turned. But we'll loop back around to what that category might be called. But yeah, she's an outlier for sure. But then going back into, I think, the same sort of categories is, of course, the biggest turn from Catherine that we know of is Stefan and Damon.
Absolutely.
They're, of course, both very intentionally turned by Catherine. She doesn't actually do the act of killing them. Their father does that.
Yep, great.
But she, of course, is feeding them blood on, like, maybe not weekly, but like a schedule.
Yeah,
so that just
regularly.
In case.
Yeah, and she had Emily make the daylight rings. So it's intentional.
It's 1,000% intentional. And I think... Okay, do we want to tackle this one by one, brother by brother? How do we want to do this? Because I think there's a debate to be had here.
So I do think there's a debate, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I actually think the brothers were turned for different reasons.
I also think it was different reasons.
We might be more on the same page then.
Okay, that's good. Because let's start with Stefan.
Yeah.
So Stefan, I do believe, was turned by love from Catherine.
Yes, that's what I was going to say too.
Catherine says over and over again in 1864, in the present day, she reiterates over and over again how much she loves Stefan.
Yes.
And I do think that there's a lot of doubt to be had because it's Catherine.
Yes.
However, I do think that the whole like doppelgangers being fated to be together gives a lot of like support to Catherine's claim of loving Stefan. And I think that for me, that does solidify that Catherine did turn Stefan because she wanted to be with him for romantic love.
Yes, I agree. And I think, you know, this is maybe getting a little tangential, but to sort of go to that point, there are times when she shows she loves Stefan.
Yes.
I think not as much in 1864 because we get so little of it, but I think in present day we do see that those feelings still remain at least a little bit.
Yeah. And
I think that's why I'm willing to say Stefan was turned for love.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to season 2 because this is where we get to talk a lot about Stefan and Catherine.
Yes.
And it's a really interesting, complex situation. But I do think at the end of the day, I think the reason she turned him is love.
Yeah, I think so too. I was going to put him pretty cleanly in the love category.
Damon is the question mark.
Not so much.
So I think if we look at 1864, I would say that Catherine turned Damon for love, because in 1864 I think she plays it well, and so this will turn, but I think when you just look at 1864 Catherine and why she turns them, it's like she loves both of them. She turns them both because she wants to be with them both. However, the Catherine that we get after, like if you're only looking at season 1, that's probably the takeaway you would have is,
yeah, you could think it's for love, maybe.
Yeah, you really have no reason to believe otherwise. However, in season 2, you very quickly get reasons to believe otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, even in season 1, we know she led Damon on for 145 years.
That's true. You find out that she was alive and she just never followed up with him. So that's valid.
Yeah. In my mind, I have Damon in the boredom category.
I do too. Yeah.
I love you, Damon.
So sad.
I hate to say it, but yeah, I think he was turned out of boredom. Like, he kind of got lucky in that he was able to sort of tag along and like sort of get tacked to Stefan's turn.
Well, so here's the thing I actually think is interesting about this is I agree. I think Catherine turned Damon out of boredom. She was like, yeah, I'll just tack on Damon with Stefan because I want to be with Stefan, so might as well drag on Damon.
Yeah.
However, she only gets as far with them as giving them blood. She's locked up when they get killed, and when they get turned, Stefan actually turns just on happenstance, on accident. They both could have very easily let themselves not turn and just die, and I think they were both planning to do that. But of course, Stefan gets in this weird scenario where he has the strength and the blood, and he can't resist, and he turns. then Stefan is the one that actually forces Damon to turn.
That's true.
Well, technically he is a vampire that changes Damon, but he is not the vampire's blood that changes him. However, I think we can sort of accredit Damon's turning to Stefan and Stefan's love for him. Like, that is ultimately why Damon turns, is because Stefan loves him, not because Catherine was bored or because Catherine loved him. Like, and it's mostly me being like, I love Damon, and it's too sad to think that, like, Stefan was turned for love and Damon was just like, might as well throw in, give me the free sample too, like, you know, whatever. Like, I think that we can accredit some of it to Stefan in making that final act be, like, out of love.
Yeah, that is a really interesting point. And I think there is a distinction to be made within, you know, the transition is, you know, who gives the blood and who does the killing, or in this case, coaxing someone to turn. Yeah. Because there's at least one character I can think of where those are two different people, and it's, you know, that has a big impact on, like, why they were turned. So I think that's a really interesting point. And we did just see in the episode Blood Brothers, you know, Stefan plays a huge role in turning Damon, which I wouldn't have thought of if we hadn't recently thought of that. So, and recently watched it. So that's a good point.
No, exactly. Because Damon fully was ready to just let himself not transition and just, like, die. Yeah. And it is fully Stefan's intention that Damon turns. And I think you're right. There's so many examples of people where, like, their blood is not the reason that they were exactly turned. It just was happenstance. And that's kind of what it is here. Catherine was intending to turn them, obviously, but it was more so happenstance. She didn't kill them to put them in transition, and it was really Stefan that made Damon turn, which I just want to believe that Stefan changed Damon out of love, which he did. He definitely did want him to be there because it's his brother. Like, again, family love. It's weird how actually a lot of these examples are coming down to family love. Yeah. Almost a little bit more so than romantic love.
Yeah, I actually think the romantic love, we don't really see that often.
I think it's really hard to romantically love someone enough to want to turn them. Yeah. Because, I don't know, then you're really stuck with them. And we'll get into some examples there where it gets a little interesting. Yeah. So off the brothers, like, bloodlines, Stefan, as far as we know, never turned anybody. No. I can't think of a single example of anyone he's ever turned. And that might be because I think Damon is really the only person he's not turned directly, but played a big role in turning. And of course, that is the moment that birthed the idea of it'll be an eternity of misery. Stefan was Damon was that mad at him for turning him that probably convinced Stefan to never try it again.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I wouldn't have thought about that before, but I think that could have been why he never turns anyone ever again.
Yeah, it didn't really work out well the first time.
Nope, not really.
But he was willing to do that to Damon because he couldn't live without him, really. Yeah. But can he say that for other people? Not really. And again, Stefan, as he gets older, realizes it's a curse and doesn't want to impart them on other people. Kind of like Finn. Damon, on the other hand,
not as much.
We have 5 examples from Vampire Diaries, at least, of people he's turned, and I'm sure he's turned countless other people. I think he says that to Stefan and Isabel. He's like, I don't remember who I've turned.
There's no way for me to know who Isabel is. I think he does say that.
Yeah, like, that's how many people he's turned. Yeah. The very first example that we actually see Damon turn, and it is the first example that we ever see of transitioning in the vampire universe, is Vicky Donovan.
Yeah. That one's pretty cut and dry. Damon literally says, and we see pretty clearly, it's out of boredom.
Yeah, and I think that is actually literally why Anna says it in her examples, is because the writer's room, it was the only example they even had at this point to refer to. They had Vicky, and then Stefan and Damon did happen just a couple episodes after this, but they probably knew, you know, it's a writer's room. They knew it was coming up. But that's probably why they threw in the boredom on the list, is because, like, well, we already did this one, so we have to add it.
Yeah, and I think, well, Anna says, you know, that doesn't turn out well usually.
Exactly.
I think she is alluding to Vicky when she says that.
That's true. I forgot Anna actually does even, like, as a character know what happened to Vicky. So, yeah, that one is very pointed towards Vicky, and it fits her perfectly.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's why Vicky gets turned. And then the next person we know of that this could be debatable, that I think falls into that same category is Isabel. We sort of see her transition in a flashback, but we know Damon turned her.
Yeah, that's actually a really good, I think, category for her, because I honestly had no clue. I was like, I'm going to wait and see what Rachel says that Isabel falls in, because it's weird because Isabel is the one that actually intends to get herself turned, and she doesn't, like, you know, she's the one that makes the choice, and she goes to Damon and seeks it out. But of course, Damon does have to ultimately make the choice. So I do think that is out of, like, boredom. He doesn't love her. Yeah. It doesn't serve any larger purpose or revenge. So
yeah, no, he's just, yeah. And I also think, you know, I just said there was a distinction between who gets the blood and who does the killing. But I do think there are some cases where the person who turns, you know, seeks it out. There is at least one other character. And yeah, I think this was also sort of out of Isabel's boredom too. Like, Damon is bored, and I think Isabel is a little bored with her real life.
I actually think that's accurate, because, yeah, that is the thing, is if we're looking at Isabel as more so the person who incited her getting turned into a vampire, I do think hers as well is out of boredom. It's out of just, like, wanting to see how to make her life, you know, better. So.
Yeah. I think it's probably a loose interpretation of boredom, but I think she kind of falls into boredom.
Yeah, definitely from Damon's side,
Definitely from Damon's side, even a little from her own.
Yeah, I think that is actually a really good example. The next example that I think also fits, like, very snugly into a category is Caroline.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I think she fits really in one. I think she sort of serves like a dual purpose, is someone to do your dirty work.
Yes.
And I think she sort of fits into revenge too.
See, I was going to say she's a cut and dry revenge for me, but when you say dirty work, that is true.
Yeah.
I forgot that Catherine does use her. Yes. We haven't gotten to season 2 yet.
Yeah. So. Spoils. I know I always say it, but just in case.
But yeah, Caroline does end up getting used for Catherine's dirty work. So I guess that is accurate too. But to me, I just only recalled it as revenge because specifically when Catherine does it, she like tells, you know, Caroline to tell the boys game on.
Yeah.
And so to me, it always read as revenge. But I think you're right. It is also, it's to have like a little henchman.
I think so too. And I think the only real reason that I'm thinking, I mean, she does end up using Caroline. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that makes me think that is later on, Catherine makes it clear that her intention was always to use like Caroline and Tyler in the Sun and Moon curse ritual sacrifice thing.
Yeah, so to me that almost fits in that other weird same category that Catherine does.
That's true, yeah.
We'll get to where that is, but let's keep count. We've got Catherine and potentially Caroline is in this sort of weird other category. Yeah. At least in my mind. I don't know where yours is shaping up to be, but in mine they fit in my 6th category that's yet to be defined.
I think that fits into my 6th category. Again, I don't know if we'll have like the same definition, but I think it works. And I think it works better than like do your dirty work.
Yeah.
But I think if we're going to say, you know, stick with Anna's categories, I think revenge is probably like the foremost reason. And then it works out that she could use her in the Sun and Moon curse, and she uses her as like her little like henchman, breaking up Stefan and Elena.
Oh, Catherine will always work to every single advantage.
Exactly. Yeah, she was also probably a little bored. So.
She probably was, which is actually kind of surprising. The one you haven't mentioned is actually the one I thought you were going to mention, which is love. Which, of course, does not apply to Catherine at all. No. But this is, again, where the distinction of the person who gives the blood versus the person who does the act of the transformation. Yeah. Catherine is the one that kills Caroline, but she turns from Damon's blood. Now, Damon does not love Caroline. He has no real connections. Yeah. But Damon gives Caroline blood because Elena requests it. And Elena, of course, wants Caroline to have blood only to heal her, not to transform her, but out of love. And so it's kind of funny how when you actually look at like each of the pieces that are involved in turning someone into a vampire, how like in some cases, and I think Caroline actually now we're seeing is the prime example, you can fit it into like every little bucket of like, well, it started out as love because Elena wanted Damon to give her the blood to heal her, but then Catherine turned it into revenge, which also turned into like all these other things. It's interesting. Caroline is such like a really well-rounded use case in all of these categories.
Yeah, she has a lot going on for her. But that's also a really good point. Yeah, I remembered, of course, it was Damon's blood, but I wasn't even thinking about how Damon ended up giving her.
Yeah, she just randomly had Damon blood. No, it was literally because she was going to die from that car accident at the end of season 1, and Elena asked Damon to give Caroline that blood to heal her because she loves her.
Yeah, there really is a lot that goes into making a vampire.
It really is. Yeah. One that is like a lot more simple is Abby.
Yeah.
Bonnie's mother is again turned by Damon and Damon's blood.
Yeah, I don't really want to categorize her because I think Abby fits really well into one of my like other categories.
Me too.
My yet to be revealed.
Yeah.
But maybe if we want to talk about Anna's categories, maybe love, but again, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the stretch of Caroline too, where like the request here, she was turned because Klaus and Elijah demanded that Damon and Stefan stop the ritual that Bonnie and Abby were doing, and the only way to cut off a connection of a witch to magic is like killing them turning them into a vampire so they no longer have the connection. And they did do that out of love for Bonnie, to turn her so that, you know, Bonnie still has her mother. Her mother's not dead, but you know, they had to save Elena, so they had to cut her connection somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me though, I do agree. She is kind of like the main face of my 6th category that is yet to be named.
Yes, definitely.
And then again, another one that for me fits into my 6th category is Elena.
Yeah, Elena is odd. I think she fits into like my maybe 7th category. Once you get to like 7, 8, 9, 10 categories, it's like, are we really categorizing anymore? But I think I have like a 7 if we count the learning curve. And yeah, Elena is just such a weird example. I think we can at least agree she doesn't fit into like the Anna categories. It's such a weird circumstance.
Elena is the truest example, I think, of an accidental turn.
Yeah.
And that's because she has Damon's blood in her system because Meredith Fell, the doctor, had healed her because, again, like Caroline, Elena was going to die. However, no one knew that Elena had blood in her system. Unlike Caroline, where like Catherine found out and used that as a strategy to take her out. But Elena, nobody knew. It just happenstance was the day that, you know, the originals all had to kill her in order to take out Alaric.
Yes.
And Rebecca was the one that actually, you know, forced Elena off the bridge and drowned her. But yeah, she's the truest example of an accidental vampire, I mean.
Yeah.
And for me, that fits. I think I'll argue it when we get to like our reveals of what our other categories are.
Yeah.
I'll look back to that one because for me, I think fits in my 6th category.
Yeah, she definitely fits in like my like 7th one, but
interesting.
Definitely not in any of the Anna categories.
Not really. No, it's not. No, Rebecca doesn't love her.
No, of course not.
Yeah, it's not boredom. It's not revenge. Maybe you could say revenge slightly because that's not the intention. Although Rebecca is taking some revenge joy out of it.
That's true. She definitely is. She's been wanting to kill Elena.
Yeah. And that ends like our sort of bloodline from there. Then we get into some of these outliers who were changed for other reasons by other people. I think the main one would be Enzo.
Yeah, Enzo was turned by Lily Salvatore. We know that, you know, he was boarding a ship to the U.S.
Yeah.
And he had tuberculosis, I'm pretty sure, and was going to die.
It's always TB.
It's always TB. Yeah, and she saved his life, basically.
Yeah, and for me, that fits into love.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, no.
The way you said it, you were like, I was like, she does not think it's love. No. Again, it's not romantic love. It's not even familial love. To me,
like
it is
humanity love.
Exactly. And I kind of mentioned that in one of our earlier people that like, yeah, there's the family love, there's the romance love, but I think love extends also into caring and to compassion and to doing it as a way of saving someone. And there's no example better than Lily changing Enzo just simply because she didn't want to see this young man die.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate way to put it. And I think that could reduce my categories because I'll just say it. My 6th category was going to be like the mercy turn.
Oh,
someone is going to die and you don't want them to have to die, which
interesting.
I think Lily did with a bunch of the heretics. I think that was sort of their circumstance. Yes,
that was almost all of them, I think.
She did it with Enzo, and then I think Abby fits into that too.
Yeah.
Like, she was going to die. She had to die to save Elena, unfortunately. She didn't have to die, but you know, she had to die to save Elena, and they didn't want her to actually be dead, so they turned her out of sort of mercy, which again, that's compassion. So that does fit into love.
Interesting.
If we're taking a really broad view of love.
Yeah, interesting. So we were going really different directions with our sixth category.
Well, I still have my seventh.
Yeah, you still have your seventh. Maybe your seventh is my sixth.
Okay.
But yeah, I personally was looping all of those as love for me because I think
that's reasonable.
I do think general compassion for a person and not wanting their life as a whole to end is an extension of love. It's not romantic love. It's not familial love. So it is different. And people might argue against this. I'm curious, like viewers, watchers, listeners, whatever you are, if you agree with that or disagree with that, I don't know. But it is, I think, an extension of love.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I do think, mercy turn is compassion, is love. I think if we're taking that broader view, I do think that does work.
Yeah, helps to reduce our categories a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want to have like 18 categories. So yeah, I think we can call those all the mercy turns love. Related to Lily Salvatore and the people she turned, and a very different reason for turning, is Lily ends up turning Kai, so that Kai can sort of, it's so he can exact his own revenge. Yeah, I don't really know Lily's reasoning for turning him though.
Yeah, I don't remember the circumstances around all of this, but it is of course just like Kai wanting to be the big bad and be undefeatable, which to me sort of fits in the same category as like Catherine and I can't remember who else the other person was, but there's like a couple examples of these people who want to turn just to become more powerful. I guess Lucian is kind of like that. Yeah. And for me that fits in my sixth category. Okay. I don't know at this point if I should just reveal it. I feel like
just go for it. Yeah.
So for me, my sixth category is I'm calling it strategy. And it's sort of it's sort of a hybrid of revenge or the dirty work, but it's almost more on the person who is getting turned. Catherine and Kai being some like key examples. And that's of course because it kind of, and I also was including like Abby and Elena in this as well. Right. Of like, it's just part of a larger strategic move. Yeah. In Catherine's case, it's so that she can stay alive and like outrun Klaus longer. In Kai's case, it's so that he can stay alive in order to try to defeat, the Salvatores and everybody else. In Elena's case, she's killed strategically by Rebecca in order to stop Alaric, to kill Alaric. And then Abby's case, she's killed strategically to stop the spell. So it's sort of like a weird, undefined category that kind of fits like a broad view of like of people there. But for me, that was sort of the thing I felt was missing from Anna's roundup was like, she's not equating for the larger... like whatever we want to call it, like all these strategies and plots and ploys.
Yeah, the forces that be.
Yeah. Like she's not accounting for that because I think the average vampire is not dealing with these things.
Probably not.
But when we're talking like the originals and the doppelgangers and all of these like bigger forces, there's a whole lot of strategy going on around their villainous acts and how they can exact those and how they can survive those. Yeah. And so to me, Catherine, Kai, Elena, and Abby are like the four key examples of that. Yeah. And actually, I will say, Marcel, if you remember, so he's turned by Klaus out of love, and then he gets turned again into, like, the big bad vampire.
That's true, yeah.
Which he does himself, and again, that's a strategic move. Like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily out of revenge. It is, in part, because he's pissed off at Elijah specifically, and the originals as a whole. But it is also strategy that he wants to become more powerful in order to. Lucian does the same thing as well. Yeah. So to me, that's my sixth category is like strategy. It's like a war game.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good way to put it. I will say, I think I'll just reveal my category too. I think my 6/7th category is similar. I was thinking of defining it more loosely as like a means to an end. So I was thinking Elena, Rebecca killed her to stop Alaric. Yeah. A means to an end. Jenna, which we haven't gotten to Jenna yet, but if we want to open up Jenna.
Yeah, let's segue into Jenna.
Yeah, we'll segue into Jenna. Jenna was killed, she was turned by Klaus for the ritual. Sort of like a means to an end. He wanted to accomplish that end goal, which is pretty much the same as strategy.
And it was revenge because he also did it specifically because of Elena to piss her off.
True.
However,
that is true.
I agree. Ultimately, it was part of a strategy of like he needed somebody and yes, he did choose her specifically as revenge, but ultimately he just needed anybody for his larger game.
Yes.
Again, the war games, like that's what they're all trying to get at here.
Yeah. I was thinking even Caroline could like slightly fall into that category.
That's true. Yeah.
She was sort of like
Again, Caroline fits every category.
She fits every single category. There was a lot that went into her turning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she fits. Even like Abby could also sort of loosely be means to an end.
She is totally a means to an end.
We were just trying to avoid that death, and then also she had to die.
Yeah, and we had to stop the spell. So that's why we did it.
Strategy means to an end. I think that's that other reason. But again, Anna, she was probably living her life low key. She was not playing these bigger games.
I think it's that, and then also how do you even begin to describe that to Jeremy, who just found out about vampires?
That's true. That's like a higher level.
Yeah, Jeremy's, if Anna even is, I don't know that she is, but Jeremy is not aware of originals and power games and like the vampires that are like running the world basically. Yeah. So that's where Kai and Jenna, I do agree, is like a good example of this 6th, 7th category of the strategic ploy, a chess piece, if you will.
Maybe that's like the best way to put it, because it's also interesting when you think about Kai and Catherine sort of doing it to themselves, and it's their own means to an end.
It's sometimes the person doing it to themselves, and sometimes it's a person unknowingly, like Rebecca to Elena. Like there's a lot of factors that go into that one. But ultimately it is like a means to an end, a bigger part of a larger goal. And I don't know if so the other one for me that I think also fits in that category is Alaric.
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about Alaric. Yeah.
Alaric is, again, not turned by a vampire.
Right.
He is, like the originals, created as a brand new species by Esther.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, again, a strategic move, a means to an end. His whole reason for being changed by Esther is to kill the originals. Like, she doesn't love him.
No.
Maybe you could argue revenge, that she wants revenge against her, but I don't really see it as revenge against them so much as like punishment, as like I want to make things right, which is just her larger goal, which is, again, she's just playing to her larger goal.
Yeah, I think he fits both in that category, and then I do think he fits in Anna's category of like someone to do your dirty work.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. He's very much dirty work. Yeah,
Esther just needed someone to kill the originals, and it couldn't be her, unfortunately. So
that's true.
I feel like he kind of fits that one, but also, it was a strategy to get him to do it for sure.
Yeah, I do think he's a minion, but he is the strategy as well. An interesting sort of bridge.
Yeah.
We have a couple more outliers that I don't know where they fit, but an easy one. Lexi's boyfriend. We get a throwaway sort of mention in season 1 that Lexi transformed her boyfriend into a vampire because she loved him and she wanted to spend forever with him.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Again, it's sort of like the Vicky example where like the writers had written that Anna line knowing that one had already happened, and it's like perfect. Just drop it in.
In fact, I think that's like the only time that really happens where someone turns someone out of romantic love.
I actually think it is. I can't really think of a perfect one. I mean, I think there's an example in a later season where like Enzo has Bonnie wearing his blood around the necklace as like a symbol, and like theoretically she could take that blood at any point to be with him, and he kind of asks her to be a vampire with him, but it doesn't happen for multiple reasons. But that's like an example where like it kind of happened, but like we see why it doesn't actually work out a lot of times.
I think there are a lot of circumstances where it could have gotten to that point, but they were intervening. Elena probably would have turned eventually. Purposefully out of love, maybe.
Maybe.
If there was no cure.
It was a topic for sure.
But no one ever really. Most people don't even live long enough to have the choice of becoming a vampire. They just kind of get there for another reason.
Exactly. And then we have one person left that I don't think we've talked about. This is the only one I can think of that we haven't talked about. And she's another really weird outlier. And that is back to the originals of Haley.
Yeah. Haley doesn't... So Haley is turned by Hope when she's pregnant with Hope.
Yeah.
And dies.
Giving birth.
And maybe because it's related to the pregnancy, you could say it's like maternal love, like that sort of
you can totally make the stretch to love, but it's so unintentional.
Again, it's
it's hard to categorize. It's like
a really weird...
Actually, maybe we could say that she sort of fits into the same, which this isn't a category per se, but she's almost the same as the originals and Alaric, where like she's made into what she is rather than like specifically turned. She is technically turned, but like it's such a weird. I don't know. It's maybe the only other example of like an accident, really, because.
Well, I think so. I think it's maybe instead of learning curve, it should be like truly accident, because I do think, I mean, the person killing Haley is intentionally trying to kill her.
That's true.
It's an accident that she turns into a vampire and comes back to life. Like,
although given the choice, Hope would have turned her out of love.
True. Yeah.
So it's a non-categorized one. I don't know. I think it is like, again, a true accident.
I think so too.
Nobody knew that was gonna come out that way. Because also, again, like they didn't even know what to expect of Hope. This was literally her birth. Yeah. So like they don't know what she's gonna. Is she gonna come out a tri-bird? Is she gonna come out?
Well, like,
who knows what this baby is gonna be? Although apparently the witches do, because that's why they're trying to kill Haley.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And Hope is an interesting example. We said we're not going to get into Legacy, so I'm not going to spoil what exactly happens. But there's only one character. Well, there's like a couple. She turns one person in originals.
Right.
I don't know why.
Remember the circumstances around that.
I think she's acting out, and she just wants her mom's attention, or her dad's, whoever it was.
Yeah.
I think that was why. So I don't know where that fits in terms of like
maybe like love. She was doing it because she wanted Haley and Klaus's love. I think it's because she wants Klaus's attention.
Yeah, but that feels like such a stretch. That's not what she turned that person. I think that's strategy, actually.
Actually, yeah, I think it works for
strategy,
that one well,
because it's like, she turned them so she could get their attention.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. But she definitely, there's another good example in Legacies that is fully a strategy turn. Another example of like a person who, the person who turns them does not do it knowingly.
Right.
And that is because the person does it very strategically in a Kai Catherine manner. So,
interesting.
Won't spoil who, but if you've watched Legacies, you probably know who I'm talking about. You should know who I'm talking about. Yeah, so that's the only other. I think we've talked about literally everyone that transitions in all of the TVDU, Vampires Originals, and even Legacies, because those are the only two we know in Legacies. Everybody else, we don't know why or how. Who turned them. Right. So that's all we got.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everyone. A couple, maybe side characters, but...
Yeah, so I guess the roundup is, what are our categories? We've got our original categories from Anna, which is...
Which is dirty work, boredom, revenge, and true love. Which, again, I think we will broaden into, like, love, compassion, platonic love, familial love, all those loves.
I think so. And then I guess our add-ons is... Well, so we called it learning, but maybe that is like accident, like true accident. And I think it really only applies to like those first three vampires that were turned by the originals. And who else did we literally just say was accident?
I think Haley kind of... Well, actually, I think Haley fits best in that one. And then it's Elena kind of fits in that one.
Elena kind of fits in that one, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Haley does loop in with those three first originals as being... Just it is
pretty much unknowable that she could turn.
Yeah, nobody knew what Hope was going to come out as. So I think that's our fifth category that we're tacking on. And then I think our sixth is strategy of like, whatever your means to your end, you're going to do this because it's some part of some larger goal in order to achieve whatever your big master chessboard game is.
Yeah.
I think that's our like full list of categories of reasons to turn a vampire so far in the TVDU.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if anyone comes up that we like that you can think of, comment it, obviously. Yeah, but I think that's everything. And I think with those added categories, everyone fits in somewhere or into multiple. Yeah,
and it's really impressive that even without our tack-ons, like almost everyone fits into those like four.
Yeah, Anna did pretty much hit the nail on the head. She got a lot of them,
Yeah, I think it would just be too confusing to explain to Jeremy, like, well, I guess the first vampires didn't know they could create vampires.
Yeah.
And then after that, sometimes it just happens for strategic reasons to protect yourself as a human.
Yeah, no, it was too high level for Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. So this was our special episode for the week. Last week, we did The Summer I Turned Pretty times The Vampire Diaries. Lots of parallels to be drawn there.
Oh, yeah.
And next week we have a surprise special episode. It'll be something fun, something topical like this in The Summer I Turned Pretty. And then after that, we'll have the season 1 recap and then head into season 2.
Yeah, so looking forward to all of that. You can see clips from all of these various special episodes as well as season 1 and follow along for season 2 on all of our socials. We have Instagram and TikTok at the Rippah Diaries podcast.
And you can listen to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can watch the video version on YouTube. So if you're not already doing that, which you are, but if you're not, go listen and watch there, and we'll see you next Thursday for a special episode.
Yeah, thanks so much for watching and or listening. See you next week. Bye.